Under the burning sun of a Texas afternoon, the land stretched endless and dry, dotted with cactus and mesquite, the kind of land that swallowed men whole if they weren't careful. Outlaws carved their names in blood and dust, and ranchers fought tooth and nail just to keep cattle alive through the drought. It was a place where love came hard, if it came at all, and trust was rarer than rain. But sometimes, in the most unlikely of places, two souls collided with a fire that could not be tamed. He was a drifter, a man with no home but the trail, his boots worn to the sole and his gun always ready. Folks said he'd killed a man in Kansas, maybe two in Colorado, but no lawman had ever pinned him down. His name was Luke Calhoun, and when he rode into Red Mesa, he carried nothing but his colt, his horse, and a hunger that went deeper than food. She was the wife of a dead rancher, though some whispered she'd never truly loved the man. Evelyn Kane was her name, and she was as fiery as the desert sunsets. Long auburn hair spilled down her back like wildfire, and her eyes had a look that could stop a man's heart, or send it racing straight into danger. She lived alone now, keeping the ranch that had nearly broken her late husband, fighting off creditors and greedy neighbors who wanted to take everything from her. The first time Luke laid eyes on her, she was aiming a rifle at two men trying to drive her cattle off her land. He sat tall in the saddle, watching her fierce stance, the wind whipping her dress against her legs, her fingers steady on the trigger. She fired once, and one of the rustlers fell. The other ran. Luke rode closer, slow and easy. "Ma'am," he said, voice smooth as whiskey, "you don't miss, do you?" Her gaze snapped to him, rifle still up. "Depends who I'm aiming at." "Who are you?" "Name's Luke. Just passing through. You'd best keep riding." Her words were sharp, but her eyes lingered a moment too long. That was the beginning. He found himself circling back the next day, offering to mend her broken corral fence. She resisted at first, suspicion etched on her face, but something in his quiet strength drew her. Day after day, he stayed, fixing the ranch, working the cattle, guarding her from the men who prowled like vultures. And then one night, when the cicadas screamed and the heat clung to their skin like sin, it happened. They were inside the ranch house, the lantern throwing a soft glow across the room. She stood by the window, the moonlight catching the curve of her cheek, and he couldn't look away. "Why are you really here?" she whispered, her voice trembling with something that wasn't fear. "Because I want to be," he said. Her breath caught as he stepped closer. His hand brushed her hair back, rough fingers trembling against her soft skin. She closed her eyes, lips parting. "Kiss me all over," she moaned, barely audible, but it shot through him like a bullet. "Darlin, I aim to please," he said, hunger deep in his voice, and he kissed her skin with a fire that made her knees buckle. The night turned wild. His hands traced the map of her body as if he'd been starving for her all his life. She clung to him, nails digging into his back, pulling him closer, desperate and breathless. The desert outside was silent, but inside the ranch house the air burned with a passion that could have lit the night sky. But passion in the West was never safe. It was dangerous, reckless, a flame that could draw enemies from the dark. The very next morning, trouble came. 3 men rode up to the ranch, faces hard, guns strapped low. They were the McGraw brothers, notorious for taking what wasn't theirs. "You got something don't belong to you," the eldest sneered at Evelyn. "That land's ours now." Luke stepped out from the barn, rifle in hand, eyes cold. "I reckon you're wrong." The standoff was tense, dust swirling around their boots. Evelyn stood behind Luke, her heart pounding. The McGraws laughed, but it was a laughter edged with violence. "You ain't got the right to stand in our way, stranger," the youngest growled. Luke's voice was quiet, steady. "Maybe not, but I got the will." The guns blazed in a heartbeat. The crack of gunfire echoed off the canyon walls. Luke dropped one of them with a clean shot, then spun and fired again. Bullets tore through the air, the smell of powder thick. Evelyn, refusing to stand idle, grabbed her rifle and shot another square in the chest. The last McGraw fled, blood on his arm, swearing he'd be back with more men. When silence returned, Evelyn's hands shook. Luke caught her by the shoulders, steadying her. Their faces were inches apart, breath ragged, adrenaline surging. "You could have died," she whispered, tears glistening. "So could you," he murmured, his forehead pressing to hers. "But I'll be damned if I let anyone take you." Her lips met his again, fierce and hungry, as though the danger only made their fire stronger. Days turned to weeks. They worked side by side, fought off more threats, and in between, their passion grew hotter, wilder. Every touch was desperate, every kiss a promise. The nights were filled with whispers and moans, the kind that made the desert stars burn brighter. But the danger never ceased. Word spread that Luke was at Red Mesa, and bounty hunters came sniffing for him. One night, Evelyn woke to the sound of hoofbeats, 6 men circling the ranch. Luke knew this was his doing. His past had caught up. He saddled his horse, ready to ride out, to draw them away. But Evelyn stood in the doorway, rifle in hand. "You leave me now, you'll break me," she said, her voice trembling with fury. "This is my fight too." His chest ached at her words. He had never known a woman like her, never known a love so fierce. He kissed her, long and hard, tasting both her fear and her fire. "Then we fight," he whispered. The night erupted in chaos. Gunfire lit the dark, the shouts of men echoing through the canyons. Luke fought like a man possessed, his bullets finding targets one after another. Evelyn stood at the window, her rifle never missing. Together they were unstoppable, bound not only by survival but by something deeper, something that had already claimed their souls. By dawn, the ground was littered with bodies, the surviving bounty hunters fleeing. Luke was bleeding from a graze across his ribs, Evelyn's arms around him as she wept against his chest. "You're mine," she whispered fiercely. "I don't care about your past. You're mine." He kissed her forehead, voice rough with emotion. "And you're mine, always." The desert was cruel, the West unforgiving, but together they carved the life out of dust and danger. Their love burned brighter than the sun, hotter than gunpowder, wild as the stallions that roamed the plains. And every night, when the world grew still and the stars stretched endless above them, Evelyn would whisper those same words that first shattered the walls between them, her voice low, trembling with need. "Kiss me all over." And Luke, with that hungry fire that never dimmed, would answer, "Darlin, I aim to please." The land would always bring hardship, the shadows would always whisper threats, but in the heart of Red Mesa, 2 souls had found something that no bullet could kill. A love fierce enough to rewrite the lawless West, one kiss at a time.